Yeah, a lot of receipts. We definitely have a lot of receipts. I have a lot of receipts in my car because I'm like, well, I don't want to put it in my purse. So I just crumple it up, put it in my cup holder, and there it stays.
Is that
Yeah.
that's something that you see often where the drop zone is basically the wrong area, like the cup holder in your car, and where it should live elsewhere?
Yes. So I am not against a drop zone. A drop zone is actually a really great way of sorting items on their way to their ultimate space. You can also create very, very functional and permanent, so to speak, drop zones, like the entryway in your home, where you want your keys, your bag, your sunglasses, all the things that you need as you're headed out the door. So um, drop zones are great. The issue then that Ellen is talking about is when the drop zones become overwhelmed by all the things that actually need to end up elsewhere in the home. And so if you're someone who collects a lot in your drop zones that actually need to go somewhere else, do an audit, do a regular audit, and then see how many of those items that you put in your drop zone that you're like, oh, this is important, I need to keep it. When you actually go through it, how important is it? Like those documents that needed to be filed. Often we keep a lot of paperwork that we don't always go back and need or utilize. Really the important things that you need to keep are, of course, tax documents. We all know that we need to hold on to those. We're forced by the government to hold on to our taxes. But besides that, we hold on to things like paper warranties, where I know for sure that that's not the only place that that warranty exists. Also, is that the first place that you're going to look for it if you needed it? Instruction manuals. Do you ever really go back to the instruction manual and troubleshoot if your appliance isn't working the way that it should? We hold on to these things because we feel like they're important, but ultimately, do we actually ever end up going back through and looking at those manuals or those paper warranties? So consider those things as you're going through your drop zone to be like, oh, this was supposed to go over here. Does it even need to go anywhere else? Or can it actually just be done, be trash from there on out? And then you might limit all of the things that you're carrying around, believing that they're important, when ultimately maybe you could just eliminate them entirely.
Okay. Hannah, you're just rocking my world. All of these things seem very obvious, but they're not. I'm sure I'm probably not the only person who's having that realization. Um, before we get like too into deep on very specific questions, I did want to make sure that we ask you this one. What does she builds, she owns, she invests mean to you?
So to me, she means female empowerment. And I think those are the best words to summarize what this group does. And I feel empowered every time I talk to this group of women. I feel empowered by the tips and tricks and the supportive environment that this group creates. So for me, it's female empowerment.
Oh my God,
Absolutely.
so love. Um, all right, you guys. Obviously, those who have joined the call, I'm sure you probably have questions for Hannah as well. Feel free to raise your hands, unmute yourself, ask all the questions now that we have her.
Yes. I love specific questions. If no one feels bold enough. Okay, here's one. What is one area you're avoiding addressing in your own environment? Ooh, so I take this to mean you're asking me if I'm avoiding anything in my own environment, which is a fantastic question because I am human just like everybody else. So the area that I have been avoiding is my outdoor shed. And I live in Austin, Texas. It is 100 degrees every day for like 3 months here. And this is the worst time to clean an outdoor shed. So that is my justification for why it's taken me this long to get around to it. So it's on my list, and come fall, I have to really kick my own butt and get out there and do it.
This
That
is
was a
not
great question.
necessarily a question, but the last time I met you, you said just to declutter and throw it away. It just brought like a lot of calmness to me. Is that something that you get a lot from people once they declutter?
Huge. Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, Brenda, it's sort of a permission that we give ourselves to ask, do we really need this? Or are we just holding on to it for a different reason that's not really serving us? And as soon as we let it go, I think there is so much power that comes from that exchange of cutting ties with something, of acknowledging I'm no longer holding on to this. And I think that it then starts to influence other areas of your life. You might start asking yourself, are there any relationships that I'm holding on to that are no longer serving me? Are there any mindset beliefs that I'm holding on to that are no longer serving me? So I think it definitely influences a lot of other areas of your life when you start to apply these practices.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the opposite. Like I can get rid of relationships that aren't serving me, but I can't get rid of the like garbage receipt that's been in my purse for a year and a half. So not sure how that one works. We can probably talk about that in therapy later
You're
on.
right.
But I feel like I can, oh my goodness. But it's true
Yeah.
though. Like it's not only in your home that you need to organize. I mean, we practice this all the time, especially in this group. We're surrounding ourselves with people who are going to have the same mindset as us. If they're not serving us, we're going to get into a new community. Why wouldn't we do that in our own home? So I'm so
Yes.
glad you said that. That's so powerful.
Yeah. Well, Maria, I think that was really well said, how you just expressed that yeah, this is so much more about just so much more than just your
Yeah.
home. And
Mhm.
that's why this is called decluttering your life, making space for what truly matters. So it really is a concept that you can apply in many different areas. Okay. So here's another question. How do I balance a decluttering journey when I'm a busy mom of 6, an entrepreneur, and run a hobby farm? This person's busy. So I would go back to that starting small, always start small. Like if you didn't do your purse already, start there. If you haven't done your car, make that the next thing on your list. Then literally just go through like drawer by drawer and don't give yourself any more than just that one zone to focus on. You will get there eventually. And if you start to feel overwhelmed, take a step back. You have a lot on your plate. I'm sure there's other things that are taking priority over this, and that's totally fair. So be honest with yourself about how much time do you actually think you could dedicate to decluttering. And then another piece of advice I would say is I'm interpreting this that you're a busy mom of 6. So you've got 6 pairs of hands that might be able to lend you a hand in this, depending on their ages, but you might be able to make it fun. And some parents that I've worked with have developed a relationship with their children where when they bring in, let's say, like a new toy or a new outfit or something exciting, they try to get their kids to say, okay, you're going to get this new toy. Is there a toy that you are wanting to give away to another child? And that's how they sort of do the exchange of one comes in, one comes out. And that is sort of a rule in organizing too, of the one in, one out rule. I just used it in this example for like kids' toys. We can use it as adults for pieces in our wardrobe. I know that's a sensitive subject. It always is for everybody. Our wardrobes have a lot of emotion, but we can use it for even like books on our bookshelf. If you're getting a new book, is there another book on your bookshelf that you could actually part with, that either you've read a bunch that you don't see yourself reading again, or one that you always said you were going to read, but you're just kind of over it? Get rid of one if you're bringing another one in. So hopefully that was a sort of break it down into its component parts type of approach to organizing for people who are really busy.
I have a quick question for you, Hannah. I have here people, and it actually opens like a debate. I have here like all kind of comments about this, but that your car defines you as a person or as a woman. What do you have to say about that?
Yes. So I don't think I'm going to weigh in here with my personal opinion, because I think I'm just going to stick with what I've seen. What I've seen is that we go through lots of different phases in our lives. If you are a busy mom and you have a lot of kids, your car is going to be a mess. And that is normal. That is the phase you're in. And that's not because you're a mess, it's because children are messy. So I think that everyone goes through phases. I would also say, let's focus on the interior of the car rather than the exterior of the car. We can also, our cars ultimately at the end of the day are very utilitarian. They get us from one place to another. Some people are more focused on, how their car looks. They get it washed regularly. That doesn't mean the interior is spick and span all the time either. So I think there's a difference there between looking at something from the outside versus peeling back the layers and getting a good look on the inside. And yeah, so I think people go through phases. If you're in your car a lot, you probably go one way or another. Your car is either like, I don't have time, it just gets me from place to place. There's going to be takeout containers and empty bottles of water in there, and it just is what it is. I can still get to work. Or you go the other way of like, I'm in my car so much, it has to function well for me. And so you're in there cleaning out a lot. I don't think there's, one way is better or worse. It's all based on our personalities. And I do think that because the car is utilitarian, it can definitely work better for you if you ask yourself a little bit more of those questions of like, does it bug me if I get into my car and there's a bunch of trash on the floor? Or do I really not care? Either answer is fine.
But what I have seen is, I'm gonna talk for myself, right? But like when I go in my car, like I work from home, so the only time that I use my car is to go to the gym in the morning. But when I get in my car and it's clean, it just makes me feel better. Like, that's it. And just like thinking back, there was this season in my life where I was like working a lot and all over the place and just, like hectic life, and my car was a mess. I was going through that season, but I also had so much on my plate and saying yes to every single commitment and everything that it was happening. So now I'm more like exclusive on the things that I want to do and the job that I want to do. And so I think, to me personally, I think it's related, because I will say like back then I was messier. But just overall, it's just like thinking like when I go to my car, is like I love the fresh smell of clean car. When I go to my bed, like the smell of fresh sheets, like all these things, like I really love that. And I think the older that I get, the more that I appreciate. Like I will never take for granted like fresh sheets and clean home. So I don't know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It does sound like that was a trend for you, that your life felt messy and your surroundings were messy. And then as you started to limit and focus on really what was important to you, that was reflected in your environments and in your car as well. And I think that absolutely is the case. And I would say it can work the other way as well. So once you start to focus on your environment and cleaning up your direct environment, the same thing can happen in sort of inside out type of response in your life too. So you might start to realize and notice the other things that aren't serving you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Anybody has questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna jump to the announcements before we go to breakout rooms. But anybody, ladies, any other questions?
Well, I see one in a chat from Candace, which is honestly a really interesting one.
Yes, this is a great question.
I'm gonna say I understand, Candace, because I feel like I was the same way until I
Yes.
cleaned
So
it up.
this person is saying, my loving father gave me his paper hoarding genetics. My office is horrendous, and over a year now, I'm using the dining room table as my desk, also super common. What do I do with 20 years of notepads that I've taken notes at meetings and conferences, and 3-ring binders of those conferences, all my receipts, manuals, tax records, list continues. So this is
I
a,
couldn't figure out how to unmute myself, or I was just going to write it. So sorry it was so long.
yeah. Oh my gosh, don't be sorry at all. No, I think it's great because it's really relatable. And paper is something that we struggle with when it comes to recognizing what we should keep and how we should keep it. So I would say a couple other questions that I would ask that might not even be that obvious is, do you want to go back to your desk, working at your desk, either whether it's a home office or wherever it is? Like, does that environment actually inspire you? Not necessarily the way it is now, but just like that room, that space, the lighting, etc. Because there might be other reasons why you've moved to the dining room that just aren't obvious. So that would be a question that I would ask you too. But in regards to the paperwork, this might take you some time, but you're going to have to sort through keeping definitely the tax documents and the things that you know that you need. So if you have any other receipts that you know that you need to hold on to, and creating a container for those. So that can be a filing system. It can be one of those plastic filing systems. It can be a box. It can be really anything that contains those papers. The rest of it, it sounds like it's 20 years of a lot of writing. And
Valuable stuff. I should say everything is valuable.
right. So if
And
this,
I have cabinets and they're all full.
yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. So I think the next questions that you really need to ask yourself is, you are very adamant that it's valuable. Are you actually looking back at it and using
No.
it? Like, do you go back to it? And so I'm sure that it is very valuable. It holds a place in your memory. It holds a place physically in your home now. But even if it didn't hold that place physically, would you still have all those memories of these things? Would it still hold value even if you didn't have the physical notebook anymore? And the answer might be somewhere in between. You might be like, I can't get rid of that. I have to at least make a note of what was in it. And that's fine too. There's ways of flipping through, being like, oh, this is actually kind of nice. Maybe I want to either scan it and digitize it or summarize it in some way on my laptop, on my computer, on a digital format that's not going to take up space and go that route. But this is probably going to take you a long time, and that's okay. Go one step at a time.
I'll say that my computer's full and I have 500 tabs open on my phone. So I have to delete one to just get onto Safari.
Yeah.
So it kind of keeps rolling.
It does. It absolutely does. Yeah. So it might take you some determined focus to start in an area where you feel like it might make the most difference to you. So I would say you're probably using your phone more than you're actually using your home office. So if you've got a bunch of tabs open, have you gone through them recently? Are you able to pull them back up? Are they bookmarked? Have you bookmarked any of them so you know that you could go back to them if you needed to? Ask yourself those questions first with your browser on your phone. Start there, and then start to tackle a corner of your desk. Don't do the whole thing, just a tiny corner.
Is Maria laughing at me or what?
I'm laughing at Jasmine. Sorry, Candace,
Oh,
I'm not laughing at you. Jasmine says she has more tabs open than assets under management. And that's so true. Because I've been on her computer and it's so slow. So true.
I had to open another window just to create more tabs.
If you've ever been on Jasmine's computer, it's so slow.
This is gonna sound so weird, you guys, but I feel very comfortable because that I'm not the only person.
And it's funny because I'm making fun of Jasmine, but here I am looking at all of my tabs and I'm like,
Same.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep.
I also have a lot of tabs. My solution to that has been I have made a bunch of bookmarks. And within those bookmarks, I've created folders. And within those folders are even more bookmarks. So I don't have that fear of losing anything if I were to close out my browser completely. And that's been my way of getting around it. I function with 10 to 12 tabs open because I'm constantly using them. So that's, I think that's a fact of our life now in this digital age, that we are interacting with a lot of different platforms at once. So yeah, I would recommend bookmarking those sites so that you can get back to them and that there's no fear of losing that. And then you can actually close things out.